start recording. I'll start the countdown now.
Okay.
6, 5, 4, 3, 2.
Hey, how's everyone doing today? This is Bob Gums bringing you the Concerned Forum from wonderful Midtown Manhattan. I hope that everyone's taking the opportunity. I was just getting ready to say, I hope everyone's taking the opportunity to enjoy this half-decent weather that we're having right now. But I slip up and forget. We're taping on Tuesday, and you guys won't see me until a Saturday. So hopefully, when you do see this show, the weather will be as nice on the Saturday that you see this as it is today while we're taping. So, what do you folks think? What do you folks think? We've had the first part of the January 6th committee. I personally found it to be quite interesting. I also found it to be quite sad, to tell you the truth. You know, that gentleman, one of the founders, Ben Franklin, he had a saying, patriotism is the last refuge of a scoundrel. And quite frankly, a lot of the things that he said, they turn out to be quite true. Because you look around at today's Republican Party, and to tell you the truth, I am so sick and tired. You know, a guy wants to sell a can of beans on YouTube, and yeah, all my fellow patriots, get this special flashlight and this special knife opener with which you can open up this special can of patriotic Yankee Doodle pork and beans. And, you know, patriotism, and this is the, what did they call it in the 80s? The, beer commercial patriotism. That's really what it has come to. You take, for example, I call him the Caucasian Jesse Owens. What's his name? Oh, Josh Hawley from that Show Me state, Missouri, right? And I think that was pathetic. I think that he is pathetic. And I think that his children and his grandchildren will recognize him as being a pathetic. This guy, right, what is he, a Stanford and a Harvard guy? So he's got a double header in terms of, getting the elite education, right? What was it? I know one of them is Stanford. I know that. And the other one was either Harvard or Yale, I believe, or one of the elite universities we have in this country. And this guy has the nerve. I mean, he never served in the military. And this guy has the nerve to walk around talking like he's Joe Lunchbucket. And what is tragic is the fact that that mob that was surrounding the Capitol on January 6th, well, I mean, you can see the films for yourself. Josh Hawley was encouraging them. As a matter of fact, next to Trump, three people I really want to see nailed for their participation in incensing the mob. Naturally, Trump, also Rudy Giuliani, America's mayor, and Josh Hawley. Because, like the young ladies that were security officers were saying, it was the mob was excitable, but it was relatively calm. And then here comes Josh, right, fist pumping in the air, yeah, we're gonna get the libs, take it to them, a little fist pump, right? And then the next thing, when this same mob is, breaking in doors, trying to get their hands around a congressman or a senator's neck, then you see old Josh running down the hallway doing his best imitation of Jesse Owens. And I think that is so embarrassing. I know his family must be embarrassed as hell. 100 years when they're talking about the day that America almost fell, or the beginning of America's fall because of insurrection, he will feature prominently as the young senator who cowardly ran like an Olympic athlete after creating the problem. I mean, in terms of getting the mob stirred up. Now, I've come to notice a lot of these Republicans, they don't have a conscience. They don't care about their place in history. I really believe that they don't give a damn about America's place in history. Only when they can twist words around to suit their political purpose. But Josh Hawley will go down in history as the coward that ran away from the mess that he helped to start. And I think that is so tragical. People died that day. Some people I feel for. Because when people are when you take advantage of people who don't know any better, that's a sin, as far as I'm concerned. That is a sin. And I see that a lot of Americans, they don't know any better. And see, that's something that if America survives over the next 3 years, that's something that we have to work on in this country. We have to basically get our people educated, not brainwashed, okay, but educated. That goes even for folks sitting on the Supreme Court. Because I have listened to Clarence Thomas, and I know damn well he don't know what the hell he's talking about. He reaches decisions based upon how he feels about things. And it's a shame. It truly is. The idea that the Supreme Court can take away a constitutional amendment, that is so dangerous. And listen, folks, so that we don't get too deep in the weeds. In this country, we have a system, supposedly checks and balances. Now, those of you who are in my age, all right, in my age bracket, or you were fortunate enough to maybe have a good history teacher when you were in the 5th or 6th grade, you know about this thing called checks and balances. Okay? Remember your 3 branches. What are they? Well, the executive, the judicial, and the legislative. Your legislative, that's your, Congress, your Senate, right? The executive, that's the President of the United States, and the offices that fall directly under him. And then the judicial, that's your, court system, essentially. And with all three of those, not one of them can just, stand up and say, hey, that's it. Because we have checks and balances. And the founders, one of the good things they did was to set it up like that so that if I'm a judge, okay, if I'm the chief judge of the Supreme Court and I feel a certain way about something, I can't just come out and say, well, this is how it is, and beep, that's it. Nay, nay, nay. Again, you got checks and balances, just like the president, all right? President can't come out and say, okay, whoop, that's it. Doesn't work that way. If you don't like what the president's doing, then Congress can say, well, listen, we want to have it this way. And the president says no. And the Congress says, well, we're going to send this bill, this idea, whatever. We're sending it back to you. And the and the president says, well, hey, I still don't like this. So I'm going to veto, from the Latin, right? Basically saying veto, when you're saying veto, basically it says I forbid, right? So Congress says, oh, okay, wise guy. You want to shoot it down? Well, guess what? We're going to, 2/3 of us are going to get together and we're going to push it through. Because we're going to shoot down your veto, right? So common sense, if you can take down the president, you can also do the same thing with the Supreme Court. And after this election coming up, I'm pretty sure, hopefully, a lot of this crap that this president Congress has put out will be taken down. Because we have some serious problems. And a lot of it is based upon hate. And a lot of it is based upon fear. And what angers me is that generally, I'm not going to say all, it's wrong to stereotype, but generally the Republican Party has fallen under the sway of this guy, Donald Trump. And that's pathetic. As a native New Yorker, who has had to put up with the Trump family, like all of us here in New York have had to do for the last 50-some-odd years, it's incredible that you have so many people. Mind you now, they are a minority. They're not the majority. But quite frankly, for Donald Trump to have 50 solid backers, to me, it's like a nightmare, quite frankly. And if people out in the so-called heartland, I hate using that term. I might explain why later on, but people out in, say, rural America, for them to say, like one woman said, well, I take the word of Donald Trump before I take the word of Jesus Christ. And, I'm sitting there and I'm looking at this and I'm saying, my God, woman, what is wrong with your brain? And if you know the history of Donald Trump, never mind the history of his dad and his granddad, but if you know just his history, then you would know this guy is not fit to be president. This guy is not fit to clean toilets. And I mean that. It's sad. It really is. And what Trump has been very clever at doing, him and a certain section of the Republican Party, they have been very good at going for those hot spots. Oh, well, we have a problem with blacks. We have a problem with Hispanics. We have a problem with sex. Yeah, I'm real, I mean, if you live in like a urban area, what I'm saying, it might sound rather silly. But if you go out and spend some time out in the rest of the country, oh, you'll be surprised. seriously, you will be surprised at the backwards way of thinking that folks have. People actually think in some parts of the country that they have a right if you're a female, okay, and you get raped, even by a family member. They say that you are obligated to carry that fetus to term. And that if you try not to carry it to term, then the state should be empowered to strap you down and make you have that child. Okay? Now, there's no two ways about it. That's what they want. And that is going to be a contentious issue until we get that decision on Roe reversed. Or, God forbid, until one of the justices on that court who voted to end Roe versus Wade, until one of those justices has a daughter raped, or one of their female family members has a tubal pregnancy or something of that nature. Because it's not, many of these people on the Republican side, they have this idea that, abortion is just a way for people to have sex with no responsibility. And see, what's so crazy about it is that there are a lot of different things that can go wrong in a pregnancy where an abortion would be necessary. Now, doctors know this. That's why doctors are so upset. Because what happens when it's a choice between the life of your wife or girlfriend and aborting a fetus? Yeah, well, in the real world, that's what happens. Now, it wasn't a problem until these clowns, those 5 idiots on the court, sat up there and said, well, we're going to take away this constitutional right. Now, the problem is that when the courts start playing around with your constitutional rights, where does it end? And please don't believe these Republicans when they say, we're not going to touch gay marriage, or we're not going to touch interracial marriage, or we're not going to do this, or we're not going to do that. That's bullshit. Do not, just like the former Attorney General said, that's bullshit. Okay? Don't fall for that. Nobody ever thought that we would lose Roe versus Wade. But you see what happened. Now, especially women that live in these red state areas, they are in one hell of a fix. And do you know that most of the women in this country, I think about half of them are Catholic, and the majority of them already have children. And women are now left, they are left in all kinds of problems with that decision of theirs. Because what happens now, the whole issue of pregnancies, that is now food in the divorce court. Now a husband, and you will see this, if you're not seeing it already, in like Alabama, Mississippi, South Carolina, places like that, Oklahoma, right? Where men will use this, you can't have an abortion, they will be able to work all kinds of evil magic. Oh, well, she was trying to sneak out of the state to get an abortion. Now you actually have a state, the state of Alabama, will try to arrest you if you go to, say, New York or New Jersey to have an abortion. And then you want to go back to Alabama. Now, why any woman in her right mind would want to go back to Alabama, that's beyond me, okay? But that's their choice. And that's what we're talking about here. We're talking about the freedoms that we're losing thanks to the Republican Party. And again, I'm not saying each and every Republican believes in this kind of nonsense. But as a party, this is their agenda. And, you know, something else I wanted to bring out also, and it's this. This business about attacking Biden about the economy, to a point, I would say that we as Democrats kind of bring this upon ourselves. I tell you why I say that. Because, see, I believe that in any congressional district where the Congress or the representative of that district is a Democrat, you should be having town hall meetings at the very least, at least once every 2 months. Personally, I believe it should be once a month. But, you know, I hear all the crying about workload, blah, blah, blah. Okay, fine. At least once every 2 months. Because your job as a representative is not only to just sit in Congress and look pretty. Your job is to lead, and your job is also to educate. Because that is another problem with America. If you want to be a great nation, if you want to continue to be the world superpower in the 21st century and beyond, then you damn well better start educating your people. And that's all of your people. Because I know that a lot of politicians, especially in the Republican side, they don't like seeing federal funds go to help educate people. And the reason why is obvious, right? Because the more educated the voter, the less it will be easy for any politician to put, to pass off a bunch of bullshit on the people. Now, I will give Democrats credit on this particular subject. I'll give them credit because of the fact that the Democrats are the one that fight for aid to education, various type of grants, loans for higher education. That's something else that we have to look at, because too many politicians on the right, they love to, sound off, oh, America is a great nation and blah, blah, blah. And Obama was terrible because he would never say America is great. He doesn't believe in the greatness of America and blah, 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 blah. Well, I will tell you, Obama didn't say it. I'm saying it. America, you ain't great. Okay? I'm hearing, as I say that, I'm hearing people collapsing, falling all over themselves. Oh, he said America's not great. Oh, that's terrible, man. Who the hell does he think he is? Well, I'm sorry, folks. I'm giving you the truth. In a great nation, you don't have a situation where people can just ride by and say, well, hey, I don't like Jews, or I don't like those blacks, or I don't like that group of Hispanics, so I'm going to kill them. And then after the deal is done, you hear a lot of, regret from one side of the so-called political fence. But what do you hear from the Republican side? I'll give you an example. 10 black Americans were slaughtered at a supermarket in New York State. Not Mississippi, but in New York State. In a place called Buffalo. And guess what? I'm still waiting. I haven't heard one Republican, one elected Republican official express condolences, express anger that this thing happened. Nothing. Nada. And we only have two parties in this country, okay? Two major parties, I should say. And when you have a situation where one of the major parties doesn't get alarmed, doesn't say a damn word about people who are slaughtered just because of who they are or what they look like. No, man, you're not a great nation. I'm sorry. That's not an example of a great nation, okay? When you have a situation like we have, that in parts of this country, primarily in red states, where it is safer for a woman to get pregnant and give birth to a child and live through the experience. When you have a situation like that, where that woman, her chances of surviving that are worse than if she was in a country in some place in, let's say it, Equatorial Africa. That, I'm sorry, pal, that's not a great nation. See, if you have a situation where you have a huge gulf between those that have and the have-nots, that ain't a great nation. I'm sorry. Where you have a situation where people are more concerned about, well, can I have an AR-15? Why can't I have an AR-15? Where we are more concerned about arguing about what type of long gun we can carry, as opposed to how are we going to get our children from grammar school to high school and then to college. I'm sorry, that's not a great nation. And see, that's why I've gotten so sick and tired of hearing about this patriotic crap, and also looking at the fact that most of those people who shoot their mouths off, oh, he's a true patriot. Most of these clowns have never been in the military, who are peddling this crap. And see, when I saw people supporting Donald Trump over John McCain, that's when I knew that we were in for trouble. John McCain, a genuine war hero. This is not whether or not you were in favor of the war in Vietnam or not. It has nothing to do with that. Okay? Guys went, they did their duty, and, basically that's the end of it. But you want to take a slug like Trump, whose daddy 5 times paid for his son, Donald, to lie and not have to go into the military, and you hold this guy Trump as a patriot and you curse John McCain, man, don't hand me any BS about your patriotic credentials. That's absolute nonsense. And I think that what we need to start doing, we need to start telling the American people the truth. And a lot of that truth, we need to start telling them about themselves. Now, I don't know. I probably will not make a good politician, even though I do plan on running for office. But I'm not going to lie to people. I hate liars. I hate cowards and I hate liars. I will never put someone down for being afraid. But I will never, never be comfortable with people that will act out of fear instead of acting out of common sense and basic honesty and decency. And that's the problem with the Republican Party. Remember when I was talking a few moments ago about educating our people? Well, believe it or not, there was a time in this country when Republicans and Democrats busted their buns to make sure that we had some type of college grant, ways for our people to go to get a good education, a good public education. But now the Republican Party they have turned their back on government, except for when it comes to taking care of their rich donor class. And every so often, like right now, you have this guy in West Virginia, Mencken. Quite frankly, I know Pelosi wouldn't like me to say this, but I don't know what the hell the guy's in the Democratic Party for. I really don't. What the hell is a conservative Democrat? And what's a radical Democrat, come to think of it? I'm so sick and tired of these people that throw these damn terms around. What the hell is radical about trying to see that people are in housing, they're going to a decent public taxpayer-supported school, that we help them get into and through university so that we can compete with the rest of the technological world? What the hell is radical about that? And more importantly, what the hell is radical about trying to figure out how we can subdue this climate change business? And I mean, let me be cool with that. When I say subdue, what I mean is how we can deal with it. What's the most efficient and safe way that we can deal with this climate change thing? I'll give Democrats credit for something else. Oh, and by the way, I am a registered Democrat, okay, just so that we get that out of the way. But why is it all of the climate deniers, they're in the Republican Party? They don't believe in climate change. So when you got whole towns and villages going up in smoke around the world, oh, well, that's just Mother Nature. Yeah, you're right. That is Mother Nature. And Mother Nature is telling you that she's tired of you pumping all of those fossil fuels in her atmosphere and that you need to do something about it yesterday. Now, what I just said, right? Does that make me a radical? Or does that make me someone that acknowledges that we have a very desperate, dangerous climate situation? See, this is the thing that, this is one of those things that really makes me wonder about this country, And ladies, just to stay on point here, hey, if you don't like men telling you what to do with your lady parts, as they used to say back in the old days, if you don't like that, then you need to stop voting Republican. Oh, I tip my hat to what's his name, Mr. Kessinger, the young gentleman from Illinois, a former Air Force officer, and to Miss Cheney, because those are two Republicans. And hopefully, in a better time, if this country lives through this, I will be fighting tooth and nail against Miss Cheney and the people that hold her views, but that's politics. And that's fine. I like a good, straight-up opponent, okay? Because that makes me better. It makes her better, it makes me better, and eventually we will come to some kind of reasonable compromise. But what you have in the Republican Party now are a bunch of people who, out of lust for money or just out of pure hatred, they don't see American politics like that. They literally want to tear down the damn government. They want to tear down our constitutional system. And that is dangerous. You know, just like this Drake, what's his name, Bannon. And, oh, God, as a former naval officer, he should know better the things that he has been trying to push out there on the public. Not to mention he's a damn thief. He's awaiting, isn't he awaiting trial now because of the fact that he was taking the money from this, build the wall crap. And all he was doing, he was taking the money and building up his bank account. But see, that is the problem for those Trump folks. Because a lot of them, I don't know, it seems like they don't know any better. They really don't. And if there's something else that you need to, people need to understand, a lot of those Trump followers, it's like if you have like an MA or an MS or a PhD, oh, God, they'll hate your guts. See, what we have to understand here in America is you have a segment of Americans that really glorify in ignorance. They hate education. They hate people that, use critical thinking. And when you hear that, right, and you say, well, what the hell is Bob talking about? Who could hate critical thinking? Who could hate education? Well, maybe at first it might sound kind of weird, but when you think about it, it does make a certain twisted kind of sense. Because see, when you hate education, right? When you hate history teachers, when you hate people of science, right? That way you don't have to feel so bad about being backwards, right? Because you can say, well, this is the way I feel, this is what I believe, and I don't care what the facts show me. Now that's dangerous, especially to be a so-called superpower in the 21st century. But yeah, that's the problem that we have. Remember, what's one of Trump's sayings? God bless the non-college folks. I love my non-college people. Well, yeah, because those are people, they don't know the facts or they don't like the facts. So they just, they could ignore them. Give you an example. This business about CRT, right? I am so sick and tired of hearing this. This whole racial thing in this country, that's something that has to be dealt with, okay? I mean, I understand that slavery was not that long ago, right? Hell, the first black governor of Virginia, and that was just here, what was it, 88 or 80, 87? His grandparents, or was it his parents? No, it was his grandparents were slaves. Doug Wilder, yeah. That's how close we are to slavery. And I know that it's hard for people, okay? America, unlike a lot of other slaveholding places, America, they didn't let it go. In other words, most parts of the world, you could be a slave in 1 month, and something happens by which you get your freedom, and boom, you're a regular citizen or subject of that particular country, and that's it, right? You didn't have per se a Jim Crow set up. Now you had something like that with colonialism. I'll give you an example. Before the Japanese took over Singapore and Hong Kong, before the beginning of World War II, you had a situation where you had the foreign compounds, which was like the Embassy Row, the German embassy, the French embassy, American embassy, like that. And it was set up so that Chinese people were not allowed to go into certain places where the legations were, right? What was that sign? Dogs in Chinese cannot enter, all right? But here in America, what they did, yeah, the former Africans were given their emancipation, okay? But even though they were emancipated, and even though they were emancipated, they were made, citizens, blah, 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 they were still not treated as whole people. That's what the whole civil rights movement was about back in the 50s and 60s, right? But see, for some reason, America, I don't know, there's just something about this country. I don't know, it's because we need to have an underdog. We must have someone to kick. I don't know. But we have to stop denying our history, because denying your history just makes you all the more ignorant. Now, for example, this business about with the Democratic Party, blacks and Hispanics are not into the Democrats the way they used to be. Well, that's a lot of BS, okay? And I'll tell you why I say that. Now, me, myself, I'm a native New Yorker, born and raised. My dad, he got his citizenship through the American, being born in the American Virgin Islands. His dad, however, was Dominican, the Dominican Republic. And they can, nowadays you see them, they come back and forth. Okay. But for some odd reason, you have a whole, how do you put this? You have a whole different setup now, because a lot of them will say, oh, well, I'm not black. I'm Dominican. Well, folks, Dominican is not a race. Okay, I don't think you're going to find an anthropology teacher that will tell you that there is a Dominican race. But what you have a cultural thing, right? You got a lot of black folks, black-skinned people who speak Spanish, who are Spanish people. They are, they're culturally, linguistically, these people are Hispanic. But just like America does with everybody else or with everything else, they always try to find ways to basically make people separate, right? I'll never forget, first time I went to Spain, and we had some guys, from Puerto Rico, Dominican Republic, and we went to this bar. That's the first time I had paella, by the way. Oh, I love it. And this Spanish gentleman, him and his friends were there, and they see American sailors come in, and naturally, hey, it's talking to the Americans, and this Dominican brother made the mistake of talking. Yeah, see, I'm Spanish, and he had to be corrected by the Spanish folks there. Said, no, you speak Spanish, but you're not Spanish. You're Creole. Well, you're not Spanish. And I think the young man felt, offended. But I explained to him when we got back to the ship, that the guy wasn't trying to offend you, but basically, culturally, you're not Spanish. You speak a branch of Spanish. Okay, it's just like in New Orleans. They speak a branch of French, but they're not French. Okay? And see, that's another thing, how racism has really screwed people's heads up. Because they have this idea, they get this idea, let me disassociate myself from anything black, even though black is the ace of spades. But they will see themselves, what's the word? There's some terms that they use. Was it Negrito? And a few others. And all it is that the slave ships, sometimes they stopped in the Dominican Republic, sometimes they stopped in Cuba. Now, Cuba, that's a real trip, okay? Because Cuba was the largest slave port in the Western Hemisphere for a very long time. Yet, you can come into this country like that from Cuba. But today is Monday. I think it was just last Thursday, 60-some odd Haitians were allowed to drown, trying to somehow come into Florida. And, people really need to sit down and think about why that is. Now, what's that got to do with CRT? Well, I think that CRT does need to be taught in all of our institutions of learning. I don't think it should be taught to 5-year-olds. And, I've been doing all the reading I can, all the research I can. I'm trying to find this school that teaches little 5-year-old white kids to say that I am a racist oppressor. I haven't found that school yet. But see, that's something else that, generally speaking, I despise about the Republican Party, because they willfully, You see, let me put it like this. And I'm talking a little slow because I want to make sure I'm trying hard, not to insult anyone. And so, hurting people's feelings, that's one thing. Trying to purposely insult people, that's something else. But it's like that boob in Florida, that Governor DeSantis or whatever, it's just like him. Now, here's a man, I believe if his mom had been 5 minutes late or something like that, he wouldn't be here. Because at that time, they had a quota. You can only let in X amount of Italians into the United States. See, that's the thing about Black Americans. We're part of this country. We're part of the soil. So the racist groups, like the Poor Boys, the Oath Keepers, when they refer to black folks as mud people, I don't know, maybe they have a point. Maybe that's what we are. Maybe that's what we should be called, mud people, because we're part of the soil. And we built this country. We gave this country its start. And that's a fact, okay? Now, I'm very upset because of the fact that people are trying to stop that from being taught in school. You're trying to stop the teaching of history because you feel that Black Americans would get too much credit? Someone really has to sit me down and explain that to me. Because I think that's a large part of the problem that we have in this country. That's one of the reasons why we had so many body bags coming back from Vietnam, because of the fact that you didn't understand the cultural the cultural issues that the Vietnam War was all about. And you just went in there Yankee Doodle style, just charging it right in. And the folks in Vietnam, they weren't going to have it. And now look, today, I take 3, 4 people off the street. At least 3 of them are going to be wearing stuff made in Vietnam. So you see how history moves on? And I think that that's what Americans have to do. They have to learn history, understand it, and move on. But you just don't cover up the wound without trying to dress it first. You got to clean that wound out. And see, that's the problem that we have here in America. We like to, let's let that go. So I'm not quite sure what these people are talking about when they say that, the Democrats are losing Hispanic. I don't understand. I really don't understand that. Because you're going to come from another country, like Venezuela or someplace like that, or Nicaragua, and you're fleeing from a place where you had, dictatorships and all that kind of crap. But you're going to come here and you're going to support somebody that tried to overthrow our government? I don't get that. I really don't. And, I'm not trying to label anyone out, okay? As a black man that loves music, I thank the Italian community for that. Because it was the Italian community that stood up against the Ku Klux Klan and opened up the speakeasies and what have you. Hey, that's what America had turn of the last century in terms of entertainment. And those good white Protestant Christians in Alabama, Mississippi, Florida, they tried to stop that. And the Italians said, nah, We're not going. As a matter of fact, prohibition was basically, supposedly, a slap against the Italians and the Irish. But see, that's the thing. When you don't know the history, it's very easy for people to jerk you around. And it's very easy for a lot of the misconceptions to go out there. And this thing about CRT, anybody that would teach a kid that he's somehow a racist oppressor, especially if the kid is, talking about 5, 6, 7-year-old kids, anybody that would teach something like that is an a-hole. And they're not doing the subject of teaching or the subject of history, they're not doing it any damn good. And they're not doing this idea of America any good, because that just adds to the confusion. And the best thing I can say about history is just tell it. Teach the truth. But this thing about, parents, look, you make sure you just make sure that your kid is ready for school. You pay attention to the work that the kid is doing. If you have a question, before you get with your local Republican club, go talk to the teacher. And ask the teacher, well, Johnny came home and he was saying something, so on and so forth. And I don't understand this. What does that mean? And just ask the question. This whole CRT thing, what angers me about it is that some Republican college guy wanted to figure out a good way to cause problems for Democrats, came up with bringing this whole issue about CRT up. But see, what he managed to do, he managed to add to the divisiveness of this country, but he didn't add up to the knowledge. And that's the problem with this whole CRT issue. So let's bear that in mind. And I'm just about out of time here, so I would just ask, well, first I want to thank you for letting me come in your home and having the chance to speak with you. And by all means, read. Pay attention to what's going on. And take care of each other. God bless. See you next week, same time, same place. Bye now.